Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the traditional quote-unquote Muay Thai stance that was made famous by video games and movies alike. I've also written a blog post down in the description below. Check that out where I go into more detail about this type of stance. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with the stance itself. I'm gonna take my fighting stance here. I'm gonna put most of my body weight on the back leg, leaving my front leg nice and light. And then I tap up and down to get that rhythm. This is that quote-unquote, that traditional Muay Thai stance that many video games and Hollywood movies have made famous. Now let's talk about some of the biggest pros. As you can see, I have a shorter stance, right? Just naturally this stance will come to a short stance. And your front leg is nice and light, which means I can use this front leg a lot more to teep my opponent a lot more. The lead teep acts just like the jab. It's gonna help you measure the distance, keep your opponent away, and also fake it to be able to land stronger attacks. And if you notice, I can even fake it, step forward to cut the distance. One of the biggest techniques that people like Sanchez love to use is that hop and teep coming forward to cut the distance. That's one of the weapons that you'll see being used off the stance a lot. And the reason is because if you notice most Muay Thai fights, Muay Thai fighters, they'll always take a step forward and then teep, or a step back and then teep. And why is that? Because it's just a lot easier for me to get power from this stance to throw that teep. From this stance, I cannot pick up my leg to teep. I can use my rear leg, but I cannot use my front leg as easy. So from a shorter stance, it's a lot easier to teep. Since you're already here, I can hop forward. I can use that hopping teep to come forward, cut the distance, and aggressively push my opponent back. I can also use that to fake. I could be here, I can fake, and then from here, I can land stronger attacks and cut that distance as I'm faking and coming forward. That's gonna be one of the biggest pros of the stance, is allowing you to use that front teep a lot more, which is gonna be very useful in a Muay Thai fight. Now let's talk about the second part of this stance, which I lightly touched upon, was that you have a shorter stance. When you have a shorter stance, you're gonna be able to block a lot easier. Why? Because from a shorter stance, you just can. And why is that very useful in Muay Thai? Because Muay Thai is very kick heavy. We score on the arms. In Muay Thai, a kick to the arm is a score. In kickboxing, it's not, but in Muay Thai, it is. And kicks to the body is a big score. And from this stance, it's very easy to block. So if you do this drill right now, you're gonna stand in your fight stance with a short stance. You put your hands up and you do the marching blocks drill here. Block, 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 block. If you're marching this way, you'll notice that naturally your stance just goes to a short stance, because it's just a lot easier for you to block from this stance than it is from this stance. This stance takes a long time to be able to block kicks, especially when they come to the body. So this stance already, even if you're heavy on the back leg, is gonna allow you to block a lot easier. In Muay Thai, kick score to the arm, score to the body, it's a big thing. Having a shorter stance and being able to defend against those kicks is going to be a huge pro for you guys. So that is one of the things that this stance will give you. Now let's talk about the cons of the stance. One of the cons of the stance, of course, is that, well, you're heavy on the back leg, which means that this back leg is going to take a little bit longer to be able to be used. That can mean that your front side or your open side is going to be more open to attacks, because, well, it's going to be harder for you to pick up this leg since it's heavy. It does not mean that you cannot do it. It's just going to take half a second more, which in a fight is actually a big thing in a long time. It's going to make the difference between you getting hit or not. So since you're heavy on this leg, this back leg, and light on this leg, it's going to be harder for you to use this back leg to block. And now you'll see a lot of Muay Thai fighters take their front leg and do a cross block, right? I'm going to be here. I do a cross block, I block the kick here, I block the kick here. And that is completely okay. That is completely okay. And usually that's what Muay Thai fighters using this stance at that moment will end up doing, because they can't get that leg fast enough up. They're going to be using the other leg to block the kick on that side. Of course, you can say, well, if I'm here, somebody can come behind me and sweep me. Yes, there's always going to be a counter to everything. There's always going to be an opening to everything. But in case of this having the back leg heavy and not being able to use it in time, this will be, the fix for it, the solution for it. Now, another thing that can happen is that since you are too heavy on this back leg, if somebody comes towards you and is constantly being a pressure fighter and they have you against the ropes, well, it's going to be a lot harder for you to pull back any further, because you're already at the end of your rope, right? You're at the end of your rope, you have the ropes behind you, and you can't pull back any further. If they cut the distance enough, you're going to be a little bit stuck. And also, that's going to go into my next point, you're not going to be able to use your power punches as effectively, because from here, well, even if you pivot, you don't have that sit down motion to sit on those punches to land powerful punches. Can you land still powerful punches? Yes, you can, but you probably can land a lot more power from sitting down on your punches and landing them that way. So from here, it's going to take a little bit more time to open up, take that step and land the punches, especially if you have a pressure fighter that's going to be constantly on top of you and you cannot go back any further. Remember guys, you have to learn how to use all the stances in the fight and just know the pros and cons of each of the stances. Thank you so much for watching the video. Remember guys to check out that blog post down in the description below, where I do get into more detail about this type of stance and even more stances. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to like this video and see you guys next time.